your love light come into me. Show me what I need to see.
Welcome to the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria, an inspirational thought leader that offers transformational perspectives based on my unique experiences as a woman born without arms and legs. I feel like my life has been full of small victories that has led me to discover the greatness within. I believe that there is no summit upon which we reach our greatness. I believe it is a culmination of small victories achieved moment by moment when we turn toward the inward battle where we get to choose despair or hope, misery or miracles, defeat or victory. My goal is to awaken your potential, your purpose, and your power so that you can discover the greatness that lives within you. Think of this podcast as your weekly portion of tools, stories, and teachings that help you reflect on the small victories in your life. Thanks for tuning in, and let's begin. Welcome to another episode of the Small Victories Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline Victoria. Have you ever felt like you had to shrink to fit in? Like your identity was too much, too different, or just didn't belong? What if the boldest act of love you could offer the world was choosing to be fully, unapologetically you? In this powerful episode, I sit down with Ingrid Dahl, artist, writer, speaker, and author of Sun Shining on Morning Snow, a memoir of identity, loss, and living boldly. Ingrid's story is one of resilience, self-discovery, and choosing truth in the face of racism, homophobia, and societal expectations. From navigating life as a queer interracial woman to cultivating radical kindness and forgiveness, Ingrid shows us that the path to living boldly starts with a deep connection to self and the courage to follow the truth, no matter the cost. Ingrid, thanks for coming on the show.
Pauline, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
I think your story is right on time.
Oh,
Living in the times that we are in and having people like yourself who have been through a lot of discrimination and are now seeing how with kindness and forgiveness things can heal and be different. So thank you for your courage to show up and talk about your story.
absolutely. It's something we got to choose to do.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. Choose. Yes. How our identity, how we choose to live, that is choice, and it's within ourselves to choose that. So thank you for reminding us that. Already two powerful things. People, grab a pen and paper. If you're listening to this or watching this right now, you'll want to jot down some notes or just really take it in when you listen to this the first time and then go back and take the notes the second time. Ingrid, you speak from a place of experience, personal experience.
Yes.
To have you share your story and how you got to this point of self-discovery.
I'm really thankful to have had over 4 decades of life in this world. And I came into it from a love marriage between my amazing Taiwanese mother and my father, who's a mix of European descent. They met at Rutgers University, and I came into the world a bit of as a surprise after they got married. 13 years after interracial marriage was legalized in this country. Growing up on the East Coast also was quite the lens. It was a very homogenous, mixed kind of community that I grew up in, mostly white, but we lived next to a town that had the highest per capita of like gigolo bars, is what we kind of called them. And I think there's just so much in my story that helps people understand the complexity of growing up as a woman, the complexity of growing up as somebody who looks different, the complexity of combining two different cultures, Chinese and American, and then adding all of that, this queer story, coming of age story, is complex and very important. I would say that I grew up not even thinking that somebody would be interested in this story. It just felt like I was rebellious and angry about the systems that I could feel felt trapped by. And only through those 4 decades or so of living have I really had the opportunity to get ferociously educated, not in your kind of typical standard way, although women's and gender studies, getting a master's degree in that, I think is kind of an act of rebellion in itself. But the lived journey and the experimentation that comes with it, the choosing, always wanting to have a bit of critique that's not harsh, but a critique that is, hey, what is seductive about superiority or privilege or otherness? And what am I going to say no and resist? And how can I show other people a mirror into that? So I'll pause there. But yes, so much has happened. And I capture that in my book because I really think it's important for us to have these histories documented because so much erasure continues to happen, has happened throughout history. And as you said, Pauline, where we are right now, we need to have stories like this front and center and surfaced.
Mm-hmm. You said that you felt trapped by the systems. Do you feel that the systems have changed?
No, I don't. I feel like I've changed.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the systems have changed.
So how does one change in the face of systems that they feel trapped in at first, but maybe can break free regardless of what other things change or don't change?
I would say it's that boldness to unlearn, to have the boundaries of saying, no, I don't accept this, to choosing to love and respect women and people of color, to really do the work of reflection of what has been going on that has actually harmed me. How has racism abused me and my family? The harm that this has caused. How do I minimize the impact that it yearns to have? I think being asked those kinds of questions every day as a young person, what are you? And where are your people from? Where are you from? Was helpful for me to understand that there's some way to unlock xenophobia and to make it less powerful. So I would say it's almost like the art of reducing the power of these systems because I can't change the systems. I've actually tried really hard in certain environments, corporate environments. Was in roles to shift that structure and the systems of oppression and make them very apparent, visible, help people unlearn through learning experiences, you name it. Like there was so much attempt to experiment with that, and yet it persisted. Or the interest in having programs like DEI, as we see now, were completely obliterated. Those decisions are not surprising to me. And we have a lot of power in choosing to not allow the systems of oppression to feed off of itself in the way that it will always continue to do. It's kind of like an infinity loop. So the wisdom that we all have, the lived experiences that we've all shared, I think can bring more this like netted network that comes together to, again, kind of put this sort of superiority and this capitalist patriarchal force into a smaller domain that is just much more less impactful and harmful to humanity.
There's a lot to unpack there.
I know, right? I said a lot. I did.
It can feel very heavy, this kind of conversation, because it requires us to look at ourselves and to go on our own journey of self-discovery. As someone who is going down their own road of self-discovery, because there's a lot of things happening in the world and there's a lot of choices we can make on how we choose to respond through our actions or the words we say. What words of guidance could you offer someone who's going through their own journey of self-discovery?
Love the question. I would say really resisting being your own abuser because we've learned so much through this harm, through the system and process of harm, through mean girl culture, through all these practices that alienate underrepresented groups and affinity groups to then rejudge or reprioritize a system of power and ranking with one another based on privilege, range of color of one's skin, etc. And I would say that we have this great opportunity just to kind of be more curious and gentle in noticing things. For example, something really probably people would be like, oh, yeah, I get like that. If you're driving and you notice yourself being like, what a jerk, or getting really kind of pissed off at the way somebody's driving, or coming up with some stereotypes, low hanging fruit stereotypes, judgment, and just being very aware of that. Like, that's interesting. I am judging this person. I caught a glimpse of what they might look like. What is the judgment that's coming up for me? And where does that come from? If this person is of Asian descent, which I am, and I hear somebody be like, oh, yep, there goes some Asian female who can't drive, I think it's important to question that. Tell me more. Do you think this person has had as much driving experience as you or as anybody else, especially if they've come from a different country where that wasn't actually something that they had access to? That's not everybody's privilege to be able to drive or have access to a car. And just have conversations and even looking at yourself like, oh, if I have a judgment that's based on a bias, to just be gentle and question it. Like, where's that coming from? And why am I? And a lot of it has to do with ourselves. Like, I'm irritated at myself for being late or that I have to go to something I can't get out of. And that energy that's coming from within starts getting spat out. And the thing is, if we don't get curious and cozy up with our energy, it's not about controlling our emotions, but it's being able to see, wow, if that's coming up for me and if I don't process that and get to know what that is and to calm and soothe that, it could come out and impact other people without their consent and perhaps without my intent. And those things can become very unwieldy and feel out of control and then equate to being dismissive. And all of those things, I would say, are operating in a place where we've gotten a little too comfortable with, oh, well, and just dismissing it, when really it's about us getting very close and cozy up to what's actually happening within me. And how do I make sure that this energy is confronted with instead of projected onto somebody else and impacting their lives? We don't know what's happening with people's lives. And the saying goes is that always show up with kindness as a result. But that, again, kind of goes back to where we started. That's a choice. We have to be able to be self-actualized people who care enough, not just about ourselves and our immediate loved ones, but everybody who's going through their own experiences and being curious and making space for them. The last thing I want to say is we have a lot of attachment to busyness, urgency, which comes from anxiety and also potentially a relationship with importance. That extends from privilege and power. So, who am I without this concept of busyness or importance or being needed? And how am I in a cycle of rescuer, a protagonist? Like, what media role am I playing? And how do I change that script? Like, how do I coach or challenge other people instead of assuming a role of, say, a martyr? Like, there is choice we have to practice what is right for me and what is something that I'm adopting that's a performance. So, whether these are practices that we've learned or practices that feel good for us to try on, what's really true to who we are and what's true for other people, and how do we meet in the middle?
And I think part of it is what you mentioned in your answer, which is practicing kindness to help meet in the middle. So I'd like to ask, how do we cultivate radical kindness in a world that feels so divided?
I think it's absolutely taking full responsibility for the harm we've received. Everybody has experienced pain, misunderstanding, at least moments of misunderstanding, and harm. Everybody. Healing, actively choosing to have therapy and to heal from that, to be bold and ask questions, to speak up, to be curious, like that's our responsibility. It is not something for somebody to rescue us from or for us to just dismiss and ignore. It's something that takes active participation and work. Actually, I think the same for belonging. Belonging is not a given, it's something you choose to participate in with whichever groups that you're a part of at work, outside of work, in any kind of spiritual group, any kind of community. That's a choice. And several people don't choose to participate. They might just be existing or observing. But true participation and choice in wanting to belong means that we have a clarity of who we are. And that is, I think, a lifelong journey. But let's try to really be clear about who we are. And that takes self awareness. Gee, I reacted that way. Usually it's like just looking at your reactions and your feelings. Oh, I got really angry. And then I was very dismissive or curt to my children or partner, whatever it is, because we're human. Those are things that happen all throughout the day. I feel unhinged or stressed, and here's me lashing out. And then hopefully we apologize and mean it. But what's even more important is that we look at those things, and I'll give an example. If I lash out at my wife, it's usually coming from a perception. My perception is usually around I'm being misunderstood, or maybe I don't feel loved, or I'm not getting my needs met, which is very human to experience. Relationships aren't always perfect or going to fill up your cup, so we have to communicate. So, in this example, if I lash out because I feel misunderstood and my needs aren't being met, I don't know how to ask for what I need, what do I need, but it's not being met, whatever it is. What I'm not saying is really important. You know, sweetheart, I notice that I'm starting to feel hurt. And the emotion that's coming really fast in the super fast lane, way ahead of hurt, is anger. And I feel like my anger wants to protect myself, and my amygdala wants to take over and be in the driver's seat, which means that fight, flight, freeze response for me is to fight. And I know that practice isn't working. It actually gets me farther from what I want, which is soothing touch and a hug. I feel like I need to just remind myself that I can dig into what I need and to be able to ask you, and that you will really hear me when I ask you, even if you can't give me the need. But you could help me figure it out. But I need to do that work. And just getting mad and lashing out at you is not the solution. In fact, it pushes you away and it triggers your history of experiences with your family, because we all have those too, and we inherit a lot of things from our ancestors. We can't mend all those things all at once, but we can become very aware of them and communicate with each other to be curious and loving. Like, I love myself and I love my partner. I can do this. It's hard work, but I can be able to say, I notice this pattern, but this is what it means. And it's not going to excuse me to just keep acting this way, but it helps me each time pause, really get a grip on why am I reacting this way? What's the real feeling? And if it really is like sadness or pain or loneliness, it needs to be heard. And man, when I actually show up with that vulnerability, I get what I actually need, which is her to be there and to hear me. And so I am not alone. It's a much quicker goal that I actually achieve. Yet we've been learning that, oh my goodness, the amygdala, you come into the driver's seat when that's never good.
If you're married, take notes here, because one of the biggest reasons for a divorce is communication or the lack thereof. Yeah. And so understanding where anger really comes from and doing the work around self-awareness. I am a big believer about self-awareness. I believe people should take the time. It's a good investment. If you're not worth the investment, nothing else is. No one else will invest in you. Like you have to take the time and the energy it requires to make the investment for you to become more self-aware and go down that journey of self-discovery, because you will also benefit from it. And you're a coach also, Ingrid, right? So do you coach people on that kind of?
I do. And I feel like I owe it to your listeners and viewers just to share so they can look this up or dig into. I'm referring to cognitive behavior theory and therapy. And I'm also referring to the drama triangle, which the way for us to move out of it is the empowerment dynamic. So those two resources could be useful for people who are intrigued by what I've shared.
Very cool. Thank you. Did you get a master's in that or a
That was
PhD?
actually a coaching degree. No, my
Oh,
women's
okay.
and gender studies was in 2005, and this is much more recent with my practice as a coach.
Awesome. Thank you so much. But you said something really interesting. You
Mm,
said you have to participate in belonging. And I
yes.
know I've had friends move away and they can't find friends where they are
Mm,
now. And they really struggle with this feeling of belonging.
hmm.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by participating in the belonging?
Sure. I mean it from as somebody who was always othered and reminded of her otherness. So, for example, in my book, I talk about the white kid at the bus stop calling me half a piece of poop. It's a worse word. And then in the Asian church that I was brought to with my parents, especially for my mom, I was also called that. So it just kind of gives you a sense of people reminding me very proactively from a bullying lens that I did not belong, period, full stop. I am other, I'm outsider. And over the years, I noticed that I can get very easily used to being in the position of an outsider, which also precludes me from participating in communities and truly feeling like I could be part of it, or maybe I even belong in it. I think the closest I've felt to belonging without requiring my participation was from the queer community in some sense, the rock and roll camp for girls movement for sure, which I talk about in my book, and the mixed race, mixed Asian Hapa community, which isn't necessarily like a super formalized community, but when I would meet other mixed Asian multicultural people, it felt like we had just like advanced into a 3 year relationship already. Like we had already advanced from just meeting to, oh, I have a lot of awareness about what kind of shared experiences we have had. And people see that, and it happens really beautifully and really fast. And what I mean from somebody who has had that origin story of otherness in a lot of the kind of corporate settings or team settings where it's like, okay, we actually are being put together as part of a mini microcosm of a community, and we have to deliver something and work well as a team. All these things apply: ground rules, community agreements, and also how we participate and engage with one another, get curious, leave space, help people be seen, valued, and respected. Like that is, those are table stakes. It doesn't always mean that happens. But for me, I felt like I had choice to say, okay, with this team, I choose to participate in belonging because I want to show up as fully in trust, in good faith, care, and consideration. I want to invest in that. So I hope that gives a different sort of clarified lens to what I meant by that. But I also think we really need to see that there's choice in how we participate. There's plenty of groups near me that I don't really receive much after I'm actively participating. It could be an Asian women's group or other groups. And I'm like, hi, I'm really looking for some sisterhood. I truly want to participate in this. I know I'm not full Asian. I know I'm mixed race, and I get that, but I really want to be seen in this space. And how can I support you in sisterhood? That doesn't mean it's always met with great. Oftentimes it's actually not. But that can't then make me not continue to say, this is what I need. This is what I'm hoping for. This is what I crave. How do you feel? Like,
Mm.
we have to be able to speak that truth. And then we can decide, okay, well, maybe this group isn't ready for me right now. And that's okay. It's not abandonment or rejection. But it is hard to find places and besties. But I think what you were saying about besties kind of moving away, I'm sure you find this too, Pauline. Man, can you pick up? Even if it's been a year to 2 years, you can pick up pretty fast. I think what we have to remember is that participation means our energy, and our investment in energy has to be checking in with the people we love, even if they're far away, and see how do we participate in trying to cultivate new relationships that require us to kind of go a little bit beyond what's convenient for us, and to be careful about dismissiveness, even in how we like perceive a relationship or a person. Oh, well, they don't have time for me and they only value kids and their kids and blah, blah, blah. Let's check if that's true. Like, we have to check those assumptions, because those assumptions can very quickly dictate that has no future anymore. I've already stamped a stereotype or stamped this judgment on this person. And then we're actually creating the isolation which we didn't want.
Hmm. Yeah. I know in my experience, there was times in my life as someone who also is very obviously different from
Mm-hmm.
the norm. I'm also Hapa, I'm multiracial, and I
Yay.
obviously don't have arms and legs. So that stands out to people. And what I noticed in my experience is that I always felt outcasted when I wasn't comfortable with myself. And as I grew up and matured and came to a place where I felt like, okay, this is me. I am totally comfortable and accept me for who I am. And all of a sudden, the outside experiences that I started having shifted. Like people
Mm.
started accepting me. And I felt like, in a way, that had to be part of my participation in belonging, was I felt like I had to belong to myself first.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, wise words. Okay, if people were taking notes, that should be in all caps, obviously, because Pauline, you're so badass and bold. I think you're reminding me of Brene Brown. I'm pretty sure it was Brene Brown who said, if you look for spaces where people like misunderstand you or don't feel like you belong or you're not worthy, you will find them.
Yeah.
So, what are you looking for? Hopefully, it's from that lens that you just shared, which is like, I belong myself. I show up as my wholeness. Then, hopefully, that's not something with the lens we seek in relationships with others, is from one that is like, do I lack? And do you see that?
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that. That I just wanted to pause a little bit because I felt like that was a good defining moment, that we have a responsibility and accountability for ourselves. And that's why I stressed earlier that doing the work and investing in yourself so you can become more self-aware is really important. And getting someone like Ingrid as your life coach to be able to support you in that, because honestly, the saying goes, you can't see yourself if you're in the jar, or I prefer, you can't see yourself when you're in the frame. So you need someone to be able to help reflect what you see or don't see, often the case. And so I'm going to do a shameless or
Yeah, I
on
know. Thank
plug
you.
for Ingrid on her coaching. But I know I would like to also give space for you to talk about your book, Sun Shining on Morning Snow. Why did you title it that way? Yeah.
Oh, man, what a labor of love. So, there's two things. The most obvious one I'll share is it's my Chinese name, Sun Shining on Morning Snow. Tao Shre Ching is how you say it.
Wow.
And my mother gave me that name quite a little while after I was born. Naming took a while in my journey. The second importance is that there's a lived beauty of an analogy of that scene of sun shining on the morning snow. And it comes so organically at the beginning and at the end of my book. So it's both my name and it's a visual that bookends the story.
If you could give one takeaway from your book and why it's important for people to read it, what would you say?
Choosing yourself in love can transform everything for the better. Your entire family, at least in mine, can literally transform and open into a space because of the boldness. And I think people will misunderstand sometimes boldness being like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to kick the doors down and be like, no, I don't mean that. I don't mean hustle culture. I don't mean being the lonely only. I mean saying the things that are really hard to say in love and consideration for yourself is probably the hardest stuff to do. And in the story, one of the hardest is actually how my parents could not accept me for being gay. And what's amazing is, in at least in my story, because of course it's shortened with my relationship with my mother, who passed away 3 years ago from cancer. So we didn't have much time, but incredible things happened to us when we like chose each other in love and forgiveness without any kind of manipulation, which was a past, guilt tripping, which was a past for us and the family's behavior. We chose to go brave for one another without any kind of expectation held. I expect you to show up for me in this way. It was, no, you're going to show up how you're going to show up. I love you no matter what. And this can't be conditional. Love can't be conditional.
Yeah.
If it's real. So we learned together. I think what's amazing is my mother choosing me. So that's a really great story that I hope people read, because there's a lot that happens for her to get to that place. What's amazing is what came out of it was this extra view my mother had of me. She saw me suddenly, not just for my queerness, that's just a slice of who I am, but she like saw me. Like she respected me. She saw me for the complexities, for the beauty, for the difference. I'm different than her, but we were connected. And I think she also saw that I inherited this warrior spirit, which all the women in my family are part of this like warrior clan, it seems. But this, what my nine would call the best quality heart. And she really saw that. And I think she was wowed that we had this journey together and that we could be whole people sharing each other's orbits. It was no longer that I was a child that hadn't followed what she wanted. It was suddenly a woman who she wanted and chose to sit next to and to connect with. It was really beautiful.
That really is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening or watching this, go grab Ingrid's memoir, Sun Shining on Morning Snow. I'll make sure that the link is included in the show notes. You can easily just click it and go get it yourself. If
Thank
you
you.
are interested in identity, loss, and liberation, it is important for these stories to be upfront, and especially the way you deliver it, Ingrid, is so beautiful and kind and with love. There's a lot of people who have similar stories. They could share it in a completely different spirit. So thank you for that. Are there any final words or thoughts you'd like to leave our listener with before I let you go?
Yeah, I will. And it's related to that. My father, as I mentioned earlier, he's white European. He's learned a lot from having a daughter like me. And he's gone out and been bold to talk about racialized sexism and xenophobia. And I love that we can connect on that journey too. One thing he shared was, I was so amazed that you never put anybody in a bitter light. Even when they were harming you or bullying, you resisted that. And it's important for us to see that's possible and to hold ourselves to that kind of mantle of excellence, of a humanity's excellence. I think hearing that from my own father makes me realize that, yes, not only was it an important story to share, but the way it's told is an act of loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for mentioning that. It really was touching because it reminded me of what he said about it. Thank you, Pauline.
You're welcome. Thank you. Makes me want to cry.
I hope good cry.
Yeah, it is. It's a grateful cry, right? Because the news and the media, social media, pick your platform, is so loud on the division and the hate, and it's me versus you. And the way you share your story, it allows you to stand in your truth, but not at the expense of blame or anger and dismissing other people, right? Your whole thing is like to not dismiss yourself, not to dismiss others. And some people, they're doing it unknowingly, the very thing that they're saying don't do. And this is obviously not you. So I want to thank you so much for showing up courageously and authentically with kindness and love. So thank you for that, Ingrid.
And same goes for you, Pauline. You do that too. And I
Thank
love it.
you.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we probably attracted each other.
I think so.
Attracts like. If you want to be in that circle, come in our spaces. And I want to remind you, those of you who are listening or watching this, that you only have one life. And my dad just passed away. It's true. You only have one life. Don't spend it living someone else's version of who you should be. We're reminded today that boldness isn't loud or flashy. It's choosing truth over fear, love and kindness over hate and division. It's reflecting deeply, forgiving fully, and loving radically. When you do that, you don't just transform your own life, you open hearts and shift humanity forward. So if you've been dimming your light or second guessing your truth, let this episode be your permission slip to choose you lovingly. That's not selfish, it's sacred, because living victoriously isn't about being perfect. It's about being real, being kind, and being you. Thank you for tuning in. And until we meet again, be blessed.
Angel of light, come into me. Show me what I need to see. You are my pathway into the night. Lead me from shadows to light. You smile on my small victory, on my small victory. All of my life, I always knew you were the one I relied on. When every dream failed and the worries prevailed, in your hands my spirits rose up. You smiled Show me what I need to see.